Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 4 with the World Ablaze mod, and we are continuing into September, and that is the normal time for starting World War II. But I'm going to be tricky, and I'm going to not start the war, defeat Poland, then have to sit the winter out to invade France and the Low Countries. So we're going to wait for a springtime for Hitler and invade Poland in the spring and France in the summer, because going to France in the summer sounds like fun. Okay, let's do radar. Okay, 1941 recruitment was slowly progressing. More people spoke out in favor of conscription, first within the Conservative Party and later among the English-speaking Canadians in general. To appease supporters of conscription, the Prime Minister, William Lyon Mackenzie's king, decided to hold a non-binding referendum to release the government from its anti-conscription promise. The government then passed Bill 80, authorizing conscription for overseas service. It was deemed necessary. What's that crack with the Czechs still being a thing? Don't quite get that, Drunken Barbarian, what you're referring to. That Czechs still being a thing. Okay, we can modify our government now at 150 levels. Okay, production. We have a better... fortification now. We'll wait for Spear. Oh, well, Spear isn't that useful. I don't... Someday I'll get back to modding this. I don't know if I win, but someday. Yeah, we'll put air experience gain. Yeah. How come you haven't annexed Czechoslovakia? Sorry, Oh, we did. This is the developer's idea of annexing Czechoslovakia, and that they set up a Reich Commissariat. I'm something in opposition to this as a viewpoint. I'm not saying they're 100% wrong, but I think in game terms, I think annexation, true annexation, total annexation, gain cores on it, is the most appropriate. So, because they're absolutely right that it was a protectorate of Bohemian Moravia, but they're calling it the Reich Commissariat of Bohemian. But it wasn't a Reich Commissariat, it was a protectorate. But I think in game terms, it really should just be annexation. And I think they way underestimated the amount of factories that okay, because we didn't do this in time. Okay. We didn't do this in time, so we don't get that, so we can't go down to here. That sort of sucks, guys. Hey guys, yeah, so I can't, well, not that I want to do the mouse or anything like that, but we could do that. That sort of sucks that didn't happen, or that doesn't happen. Yeah, because we did go down and send our panzers down there. I know it's only 7 days, and I probably could have grabbed that up before the end, but I just... Yeah, we'll do that. They're trying to be very historically correct, the modders, and I appreciate that heavily. I really, really do. To the point that they've created Danzig. Okay, what? Satellite. Now, I don't know if Uncharted is still here or not. Why would you not have Danzig to be a satellite of Germany? Just sort of asking. I'm not saying it should be, but why isn't it a satellite of Poland and not Germany? I forgot what they learned. Yeah, no, I mean it's only a 7-day focus, and if I was paying closer attention and knew the mod well, I easily could have tripped the 7-day focus, because I did spend a lot of time with Guderian's 2 Panzer divisions in there. But can I move troops into... No, see, you won't allow me to move troops into Danzig. But Poland can. What? Danzig was controlled by Poland at the point? No? Danzig was German. It was a free city. There was large contingents of German soldiers in Danzig. Danzig was mostly German. There were a lot more German soldiers now they were SS soldiers in Danzig than they were they weren't, Heer's soldiers. Very few elements of Danzig was controlled by Poles. Most of it was controlled by Germany. Now, it was still a free city, most assuredly. So I can go either way on that. That should go to von Manstein. And what I have probably forgotten to do, or have we done the SS creation here? Yeah, we've done this. Does that give me templates that are SS? Chanel division, no. Okay, free. Yeah, so I don't know. Yes, there was fighting in Danzig during the invasion, but it was mostly just a few Poles hanging out in the post office trying to hold out briefly. Yeah, no, we haven't done that yet. We're going to do that come 1940. We're going to do that just before going into Poland. And we're waiting for 1940 to go into Poland. Yeah, well, Gdansk, or no, Gdynia up here, that was sort of the Polish naval base that was built so Poland could have its naval vessels here and not stationed in Danzig. And when, of course, the Schleswig-Holstein, the old battleship, was actually on a friendly visit, port of call visit, planning on the invasion, but just prior to the invasion, it shows up to do a port of call visit, and so it's actually moored along, or I don't know if it's alongside of a dock or just anchored in the harbor, but it's sitting in the harbor prior to the German invasion. And Danzig this is just, it's sort of like, I can sort of see that it should be neither or both, or I don't know. I'm not saying it's wrong that it's Polish. but it's something that's very sort of, yeah, I don't know. It's just right along that kind of thing. Yeah. Function Poland as a military. Yes, military. Yes, very much. And it is, well, it was even just a tidbit of knowledge. At least it was as of, I don't know, 20 years ago or something. The only port that you could ship arms out of Poland through was through Gdynia. You couldn't ship them out through Gdansk or other Polish ports. It was the one port that was designated for export of arms from Poland. Yes, I know why I know that. Obscure reason, but I needed to know that for business in the past. But yeah, no, this was specifically built because what they had, 2 or 3 destroyers and 2 or 3, I think 3 submarines and whatnot, and they were all stationed out of here. Okay, Allied powers, Treaty of Versailles decided to create the Free City, then the Free City, the seaport, and the substantial surrounding area. The League of Nations rejected the citizens' petition and officially named the Free City Hanseatic Leagues of Danzig. The citizens today received a separate citizenship from the Free City and thus lost their former German citizenship. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm not saying they were German citizens in that sense, but I would say 90+% of the population at the time, at the starting of the war, was German speaking. I mean, it's, yeah. Five subs, 4 destroyers, 1 mine layer. Great, yes. And those were all stationed out of here, and some of them made it out of the Baltic. Okay, what were we looking at doing? Something else important to do? I don't know. Oh, yeah, that's it. I wanted to do the fighters. Here we go. That's what I wanted to do next. Okay, we need more heavy artillery. Okay. Artillery. It feels like all I'm doing is building more and more artillery. Artillery. I take it, Lord, you're Polish by any chance? Is that correct? You seem to be up on a lot of that. Oh, good. Yeah, no reason you shouldn't be proud to be Polish. Okay. Okay, so we're trained. I think that's using up a lot of our equipment here. Okay, I think we're going to stop all of our I haven't been training up panzers because of not wanting to use up the limited numbers that I have of equipment. Well, I just joined the stream. I've never seen this mod before. What does it focus on? Historical accuracy would be stuff, and it is a not quite as complex as Black Ice, but is competing with Black Ice in historical accuracy and maybe a bit better in historical accuracy. Well, I'm fascinated too by World War II and various elements. But so okay, so these are trained up. Well, let's come over here and grab this. Select all. Let's train our mountain troops now. Yeah, I'm not saying B-Ice is wrong in its granularity, if you will. And having immersion detail is really nice. United Kingdom dominates. Ooh, okay. Yep, we gotta come back and whack that. Okay, they're just now. We gotta push on that. Keep from being overly dominated. But I guess this is also silly because we're not even trading here. Yeah. Extra immersion details are nice and useful, but yeah, Black Ice might be going a little overboard on that. In some areas at least. Okay, so we got that. That's what we were sort of looking to get. No, I don't know that we're going to do the heavy bombers. I'm getting fighters. Yeah, we can update our attack profiles. Now let's come over here because we really hadn't gotten very far with them. Let's convert that over to that, which, yeah, I would sort of do that. But yeah. Okay, well, I haven't really gotten into the recent update. I was planning on doing that by now, but this mod has distracted me from it. Well, I'm more upset with Black Ice for it trying to compensate for the bad AI. Okay, how many days is that? 70 days. Yeah, a bit long, but okay. Okay, what are the effects of this? Okay, okay. Molotov driver bags. Okay. Soviet Union must approve. Yes. Removes bitter enemies. Okay, I guess we need to click for more details. Okay, back. Okay, so it doesn't specifically get us to war. Okay, so yeah, and yeah, Danziger War is there. I just want to make sure that what we're doing. So let's start the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact. Get that going. Yeah, I don't know about the AI complexity. How well? Yeah, well. See, and this is the thing, and we're going to be trying out again. I don't, they talk about the AI is really good, really challenging for this game, and I'm not doubting that. I don't want to make that sound. I just haven't experienced it yet. Now there's a couple of questions with the AI. One, the combat AI is really sort of baked into the game, and we'll see what they've done with that here. Because we really can't get into the proper combat AI, at least as far as I know. What you do have is, say, production and diplomatic AIs and that type of thing that you can get into. And I don't know how well the AI is handling Black Ice in that realm. Biggest problem is that streamlined done for easier entry, but when you actually play it more, you see all the places where it's lacking. So it's made for mostly MP. Yeah, I'm a single person player mostly. We'll try the combat AI out. I sort of wonder what you can do, because most of it is, at least to my understanding, again, I'm not an AI programmer at all, but I thought the combat AI was compiled into the EXE and not something you can break out to edit. But we will see. Play Warzone. Hello, Night Sergeant Huntman. I don't know the game quite offhand. Okay. We're getting a bunch more, particularly rubber, but also oil coming in. That's going to be enough of that. Let's see. Well, we're not yet able to, because I would rather have bigger than have more. Just placing it. So let's come. Well, we're full with fuel, so let's dump in a couple of more fuel silos. They're fairly quick to build. Okay, so if you've gotten into that, okay, good. The older Hoy games were, while great fun, not really inviting new players. Now, they didn't invite new players, and that's quite true. It was completely changed with Hoy 4 and F. Yeah, but I still like Hearts of Iron 3 better with proper mods. You do with radar stations in central Germany. Yeah, well, what I want to do is... yeah, maybe one in Berlin would be good. Because I want these to get bigger, and which covers most of the area. Won't leave that on to stress out. Okay. So let's put one in Berlin, and so that will get much of that. And then, in time, I want to expand because I am was going to. Oh, I am researching. Yeah, improved radar, which will allow me to go to level 2, and that's what I would prefer to do it than just plunking more around Germany. Okay, I know. Defense. Air attack, heart attack, air attack to air attack. Yeah. We're going to go with frontal support. Okay, well, we're getting close to 1940. Parachutes would be nice. Yeah, why not? Let's do that. Yeah, Lorg is right, I think. They somewhat are. Yeah, they somewhat are. Wish there was someone was a good map editor. Still looking for a good map editor out there in chat. Someone who can make a new map for this game. Someone can make a new map. I think we got a treat for us if you want to make a new map. Okay, now we can build some more radar. 1941, 1939. Yeah, we'll do that. Now, I have not been playing with any intelligence with this. And this has nothing to do with World Ablaze, as far as I know, because I don't know if they've touched intelligence. But I'm really disappointed, not in the intelligence itself, but in the limitations and the lead times. And so it either needs to go a lot faster, or, and maybe more importantly, to be able to have more operations going on. You know, to be able to have operations going on in Britain, in France, in Poland, in Norway, all at once, and have enough agents and enough stuff going to doing all that all at once, say, and maybe an operation over in the US, and to have a lot more stuff going on. It just, to me, seems like I spend a lot of time and get very little out of it. Yeah, well, see, it's underwhelming because it's. Oh, you did change the intelligence. Okay, I just haven't looked at that. Okay, Ribbentrop Pact done. So now we're in January. Okay, good. We don't want to do Danziger War right now. Let's see about getting. Let's do this. Make sure that we have Swedish steel. Moscow signs the pact. Very good. So we've lost our trade with Venezuela. Why the hell, I don't know, but okay. Well, I think we'll just let that go, because we're currently full on oil and we are having more oil than we need, though we do need more tungsten and more rubber. Let's see, currently we have a lot of rubber coming in. These will each be 5 now because we have that bonus per, and that should get at least our immediate needs, not necessarily our growth needs with. Oh, we could do that. Let's do this now that we are somewhat in the, I hope, have extra here. Let's convert over to that. Okay, so we're not going to do rubber, but let's look at tungsten. We're going to have to lose the Portuguese soon. I'm going to grab a Coke. I'll be back in a moment. Be right back, guys. Yes. Mad Brad, as I'm calling him, because I'm dropping the X and the 13, is involved with it. And I think Uncharted was here for a while. He's the lead developer. So yes, I'm using and talking to the developers of this as I'm playing. They're planning to change the infantry equipment to something other than submachine guns. Well, I'm not sure about that, but I have to talk a little bit about some of the small arms. Okay, better fighters, good. Well, it's probably more how you were handling the disagreement, but why you got booted. Yeah, and I get that some of this stuff here will just some of this stuff here is just graphics and names. They don't necessarily mean anything. But with Black Ice now, you do sort of have the small arms that are for their light infantry versus just regular usage, and whether just trying to think, does it matter? Yeah, it matters on a certain level, but doesn't matter to the gameplay. Submachine guns, and some of this other stuff. You have here, heavy infantry equipment, which you can see there, MG08 with some mortar I'm not familiar with, and the more Brandt Stoker type mortar that Germans did use a bit later, but not so much early on. Early on, it'd be the little 50 millimeter mortars. It's a bit later that they started to come in with their 81 millimeter mortars. They skipped the 60 millimeter style mortar. So this is sort of, shall we call it, light support equipment. They're calling it heavy equipment. Yeah, it's heavier than rifles and hand grenades, absolutely. But it's where this is primary infantry weapons, where this is more support weapons or whatever, light support elements, if you will, as opposed to heavier support elements. Going along here, and basically for most nations, you have a World War I rifle, and then you might or might not have a World War II rifle. England, their World War II rifle is not an improvement upon their World War I rifle. What it is a production improvement, not a use improvement. I forget the models of Enfields, but there's the sort of mid-war Enfield development rifle. Maybe we could go, I don't know if we can go see it over there, but that is much easier to produce, but functionally doesn't improve anything for the soldier, if not actually take something away for the soldier. I'm not sure on that. And so now, where for the Gewehr 98 versus the Kar 98K, basically you're talking a lighter, more compact of the same thing. So there's a little usage, although the Germans did have smaller grenades. They're still primary grenades with the stick grenades. Now, then you move into semi-auto rifles. The Soviets had the SVT rifles. They were okay. Had problems, but okay. The U.S., of course, comes by the start of the war. They have the M1 Garand. Not in common usage at the start of the war. I mean, all of the Army soldiers fighting at the start of the war are all using 1903 Springfields, and those we're talking like in the Philippines, Wake Island, all of that. And most all of the troops stationed in the U.S., in the end of 1941, are all equipped with Springfields. They're just getting the Garands in production. Now, the Garand is enough in production and issued enough to be the common or the primary or the mostly used rifle for the Operation Torch invasion of North Africa for the Americans. Only Springfields you're going to find are either sniper model rifles or, oh, hey, those artillery guys over there, their rifles are Springfields, just because, just if everything goes to hell and you can't use your guns, your big artillery pieces anymore, you still have some sort of rifle. They very well might be equipped with, up and through to the end of the war, those types of troops very well may be equipped with Springfield rifles. Whether they were World War I produced Springfield rifles or the Springfield rifles that they were producing basically through until the end of World War II, though much of those Springfield productions were going off to the Chinese. So yeah, the bolt-action rifle does stay in use in the Americas, but it's mostly into the semi-auto M1 Garand. And of course, the Germans are looking at the SVT, thinking, yeah, this is okay, and have some oddball designs, especially their gas design setup, but eventually come around to the Car 43, takes them a bit long. That's sort of the natural progression. The submachine gun. The Germans use one at the start. The Soviets use one at the start. The Italians used one at the start of the war. The Japanese and the British do not. And you go point to, oh, but this Japanese, yes, I know. They bought some of the, it's called either MG or MP34, MP35, depending on what source and what model. They bought some from the Austrians, a few hundred. They worked on the Type 100 submachine gun, but they barely get any of them made. I mean, they're there, but they exist, but they're rare, extremely rare. Throughout the whole war, they're extremely rare. Japan does not produce many submachine guns through the war. Britain starts the war with 0 submachine guns. After the loss in France, I know I've talked about this before, after the loss in France, they start importing the Colt produced Thompson submachine guns and scramble and get mostly the Sten gun. So they also have the Lanchester for the Navy in production, and they keep the Sten gun in production. Italy has the very nice Beretta submachine guns. The U.S., of course, has the Thompson, keeps it in production, I believe, even through to the end of the war, but they simplify production, and then during the war get the M3 Grease gun, which in some ways better, in some ways not. That's debatable amongst submachine gun people. I would see that most appropriately as a... if you research the tech, you can add it to infantry battalions and as sort of an additional supplemental thing as opposed to direct line. So, and I would have the big jump is from bolt action to semi-auto rifle as being the big jump, because outside of commando units, say by the British, most nations only issue few submachine guns out to troops. It's primarily either the machine gun or the rifle. The one sort of exception, and it's only in a limited number of units, is sort of the Soviet tank rider assault troops that carry the PPSHs. I'll look at the chat in a minute. So mostly the submachine gun is a supplemental to, and so it definitely has an impact on the battlefield, but it is really sort of supplemental, and the firepower difference between the M1 Garand and I presume, though the problem with the German semi-auto rifle is they issue very few magazines with the gun. So the M1 Garand guy has all of his ammo coming in the M1 Garand M block clips. So he just feeds those in rapidly. Where the Germans, the ammo comes in nice little paper cartridges or paper boxes with the stripper clips, and he has to load up the magazines. And looking at the photos, they often just have 2 extra mags. So they got like 30 rounds, and then they got to sit there and reload them. So tactically, or at most, it goes to 5 mags. So that's 50 rounds, and they've got to reload those mags. So yeah, for short term, they work well, and I really don't know how common the SVT is. I know Germans, where they can, sort of use captured ones, but I don't know whether the limiting factor is how many examples they get their hands on that are in good shape, or ammunition situation. I think it's more how many good examples they get their hands on. So I look at that as you know, if you just want to go, this is just, hey, if infantry rifle level 1, infantry rifle level 2, infantry rifle level 3, infantry rifle level 4. Yeah, then it really doesn't matter, just a picture and a name, and it doesn't really matter. But if you look at it as sort of World War I rifle, World War II rifle, whatever that may mean, again, for the British, it's not a better weapon, it's a quicker weapon to manufacture. Now, where the Gewehr 98 and the Carabiner 98, you might want to argue it takes a little less wood, a little less metal. Nah, I'm not going to accept that as a significant easier to manufacture. It's the same difficulty in manufacture. It's a more handy weapon, so a slight improvement. I don't know the stats here. Okay, breakthrough, hard attack. Yeah, not much. Defense, soft attack. Yeah, okay. Here, 9, 11. Yeah, I don't know. But the real jump for me is to semi-auto. And okay, I remember talking with a Paradox developer who I don't believe. No, I'm sure he had never fired a Carabiner 98 and had never fired a M1 Garand. Okay. And he was trying to tell me there wasn't much of a difference between shooting those two weapons. Now, I have sat down on the same day at the same time loading the same ammunition, the exact same ammunition, into an FR8, which is a Spanish-made, made in 308, not rechambered, made in 308, maybe a little lighter than a K98. If somebody ever wants to look up the stats, you can, but I don't think between an FR8 and a 98K there's going to have much different weight on it. But fired one of them, which is a 308 rifle, and fired an FN FAL, which is also a 308 rifle. And the shooting difference of those is incredible. Massively different. Because of the and I don't even mean how fast you're shooting, as in how fast, like, you can pull the trigger. I mean on the literal wear and tear of the human body as you shoot the gun. You know, after about the 5 rounds of shooting the 308, which is less recoil than the 7.92 millimeter round coming out of the German gun. So it's less recoil, significantly less recoil, the 308 versus the 7.92 millimeter. Shooting that, yeah, after about 5 rounds, I was done shooting it. It was a friend's gun, so I mean, it wasn't my gun. Surplus gun. Yeah, I put in a stripper clip, fired 5 rounds. Yep, okay, here, have this back. Let me go shoot my and I had been shooting, and I then kept shooting my FNFAL because, hey, it's nice, it's easy on the recoil. I can shoot that all day. I don't get a bruised shoulder. I can keep shooting that, no bruises. It's fun to shoot. Don't have any sort of padding on it. Just, it's the standard. Actually, it was what was I think I was shooting my Israeli FAL at that day. I think it was my Israeli FAL. It was either my Israeli FAL or my L1A1. But I forget which FAL I was shooting that day. I think it was my Israeli one, but it's a long time ago. But yeah, I can just go back, and either of those have, there's no padding on the butt plate or anything like that. The Israeli one is, a metal piece on the back of the butt plate. And yeah, I can go and shoot that all day long. And shoot and shoot and shoot hundreds, if not thousands. Literally, I don't think I've ever shot 1,000 rounds in a day, but I've definitely shot a few hundred rounds in a day out of my 308 rifle. So the difference in shooting a semi, and the reason I brought those up is because it was the slightly different weights of guns, yes, but not hugely different, but it was the same ammo. So you can't argue that, 308 versus 7.92. Yeah, no. Same ammo, because we were literally shooting out of the same, boxes of ammo out of the guns. The recoil absorption from a semi-automatic rifle is dramatically less for the human than a bolt-action rifle of same caliber or similar calibers. That alone, and with that, shooting that gun, and I'm not even talking about working the bolt. I'm talking about firing the gun and seeing where the bullet goes without that recoil, watching it, and then seeing whether you hit your target or not, whether you need to put a second shot into that target or not. I know the Drunken Barbarian has, and it probably has gone on something about some of this stuff. And I've not been in combat. I want to say this. I know that I have some real combat veterans watch the channel, but trust me, don't have as much full auto experience as a lot of military people, but I probably have more gun experience than most military people in a variety and different types of guns than most. Because obviously there's some super gun people that are military people. I don't want to say there isn't, but I've had more than most soldiers, more than 80% of soldiers that I've had, at least in the American experience, that have gone overseas and fought in war. I've had more various gun experience. And so just the idea of firing, just pulling that trigger and staying on target, ready for your next shot, is dramatic, with a dramatic improvement with a semi-auto rifle over a bolt-action rifle, without even worrying about working the action. Now, the British short action on the Enfield allows you much better to work that action while looking down the barrel at your target, where basically you have to get off of that with either the Springfield or the Mauser rifle. I do not have good enough knowledge right now to speak on the Mosin Nagant. And you could stay on target, I think, with my Arisakas. I have two different Arisakas, one in early war and one in mid-war. Now, I haven't shot my Arisakas. Ammunition's hard to come by, but I do have two of those. So, so that is a dramatic improvement. I don't think most of these, and so the developer, so how do you argue with a stone wall who thinks he knows shit about small arms? And I can tell from his arguments that he may have fired one of the guns, but he's not fired them both. Definitely not fired them both on the same day to know how much of an improvement an M1 Garand and I've not fired the Car 43, but I'm guessing it's similar to an M1 Garand from everything that I've read, is in dealing with its recoil, is just a dramatic improvement and makes ground soldiers hugely more effective over bolt-action weapons. And so this gun is, generally speaking, would be given to less than 10% of the troops in most cases, submachine guns. And so mostly you're keeping your production going of this with a little bit of that. Now here, this is a Wunderwaffe, in my opinion. Now, it's a common one as opposed to, the Horton flying wing aircraft. Forget HO 220 or whatever, that they, did some test flights. Okay, that's another Wunderwaffe that's a rare thing. This is a common one, Wunderwaffe. This is another dramatic, and I've never shot one of these. Now I've shot AKs, which yeah, Kalashnikov. No, they're not the same gun. Yeah, of course they're not the same gun, but they function very similarly. They, from a user perspective. So yeah, I've shot at least semi-auto AKs. But they're another Wunderwaffe, which is another sort of leap forward. Does the M1 carbine come into this? Almost, but not quite. And I don't know. Okay, what have you all been arguing about against what I've been saying here? Yeah, you can just do the icons and whatever. Yes, and I do notice Uncharted that you do have the rifle submachine gun for light infantry, and that is nice. For how submachine guns were used during World War II, and the hair isn't suggested, but in the suggestion box, but one of the devs got super angry with me, and I don't lose my temper with strangers on the internet. Okay, good to hear, Drunken Barbarian. And I think, and from various things, I do think the Black Ice team have gone off the rails too much. I really, really miss Panzeru keeping that team in check. Because there's a lot of people with a lot of good ideas, but they sort of go off the rails, in my opinion. On the other side of the spectrum, I saw a comment when B-Ice went up for the first time that they shouldn't make this kind of complicated mod. Cancel culture, I guess. Yeah, well, I think complexity is not the problem. Heavy infantry is just machine guns and mortars. Okay, or don't talk shit about beautiful Enfield just because it was crap. Yeah, well, the Enfield, and that's sort of what, and I don't keep all the models of Enfield straight, but the last model was sort of a streamlining of it, where the one that they enter, the interwar era Enfields and the World War I Enfields, they're a kludge of a weapon that just slowly got modified, this little bit here, this little bit there, this little bit over here, over many, many years. And so but they shoot nice. We love our crap rifles. The SA called Iraq was the civil servant because it was never worked. Well, I understand the early ones, especially the first Iraq war, was really bad SA-80s. It got a little better, I understand. I've never shot that. I've shot a FAMAS, the French bugle, I guess they call it in French service. So I've shot that bullpup. I've shot a Steyr AUG, both of those many, many, many years ago. But so I've shot some of those guns. Steyr AUG, of course, used by the Austrians, used by the Australians. I don't know if it's the A thing that they both decided to use the Steyr AUG, but yeah, the honest German infantry team was mostly set. Yes, absolutely. They were centered around the machine gun. Because you mentioned that we'll be doing unique infantry weapons for 5.6 for other major nations. Cool. Yeah, and I'm not so much talking about unique infantry weapons. I'm talking about, if you will, whether you do level 1 bolt action, level 2 bolt action. And then I would have the sort of massive jump to semi-auto rifles. And then I would have another jump to assault rifles, these kind of things, which really only, we can argue about the Johnson rifle as a possible, but the cartridge doesn't get shorter, so it doesn't really make it, but we could argue that. I've sort of had that debate with somebody. And we can argue about the M1 carbine, which is, people talk about it being underpowered. Well, it's not underpowered and I would agree with some of the people that it's not underpowered, because I grew up shooting an M1 carbine. My dad's owned one. I own one now, as well as he owns one, M1 carbine. But it's, more powerful than, most like 38 specials and other things that are considered good man-stopping. It's just not quite with the ability to reach well enough as either the AK-47 or the, MP-43 weapons. So that's another whole leap on it, where this I look at as sort of supplemental, not in this direct line, is all I'm sort of arguing with that. Okay, done. Thanks. Oh, no problem, Uncharted. You're on and off stream. Okay. Do you want the game to be more realistic? Yes, and that's what this mod is sort of working on, and that's why I'm sort of critiquing it from a realist. Shooting and fighting are different things. Put me in and Even in shooting range. Yeah, I won't disagree with that they're different. Um, Ambush and call it ambush. Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, Drunken Barbarian. I'm not claiming that there aren't a lot of various soldier tactics stuff. Now, I have had some gun training in a very practical sense, not so much squad training, but yeah. Yeah, yeah. Normally, for us, it was a squad commander, and mid to late war, they were putting in like a second MP40 per squad. Sort of late war, they were getting into two MP40s, I think, and it varied from unit to unit. Whether we're talking about a Jaeger division versus a infantry, later called a grenadier division, versus a panzer grenadier division, infantry elements, or panzer divisions, infantry elements. Those varied in squad layouts and organizations between them as the war goes on. Yeah, Drunken Barbarian. And a lot of like what I know is comparisons between a lot of different weapons, because I've shot hundreds of different guns. Now, a bunch of them are very similar to each other. Smith & Wesson revolver versus a Colt revolver or whatnot, just because worked in the gun industry and had opportunities to shoot. Oh, hey, yeah, here Kimber shows up to the range, and they're bringing us out there to shoot. And they've got a bunch of Kimber pistols, 45, 1911 variances. So, yeah, short, compact Kimbers, big Kimbers. HK comes and shows up there with their USPs and their MP, their P7 M8s, and all these different HK pistols and whatnot. And so, I've shot in a day. I've shot. At least in one day, I shot all the lineup of, say, I don't know, 1996 or some year like that. All of the HK variants currently for sale from HK in the U.S. Shot them all because they were all out on the table. Put at least 5 rounds, no, I say at least 10 rounds down the magazine of each of those guns at the time. So I've had opportunities to go and just shoot every single HK pistol currently for sale by HK in the United States, and shoot them all, and just company after company I've had those abilities. So plus I've been around various collector friends that shoot various surplus weapons and things like that. I stopped shooting because I don't have too much ammo left for it, but I have a nice Webley from World War II in 38 Smith & Wesson. So shot that a bunch. Got it sitting right over here. Nice heavy slow bullet. The Webley from World War II. So yeah, I've shot a bunch of guns like that. And you hope no, IKB. Last I heard from anything official, but not from him, Panzeroo is done with trying to mod. I don't know what's going on in his life. He has not gone back to Hearts of Iron 3 modding, so I don't know. Should make infantry battalion text that would increase and add new equipment rather than replace, for example, 10%. Yeah, that's sort of how Black Ice works. And meaning if you research the submachine gun tech, then infantry battalions will require X number of submachine guns in addition to regular guns, so that it will add a certain amount of firepower to the unit by having that there. Yeah, I think New Order mod is using similar mechanics, at least. You need to produce, for example, anti-tank equipment and anti-tank guns. Okay, well, see, and I haven't argued, because for a while they have some of that, and some of that is also, and I'm sort of just using submachine guns as an example, some of that comes with some of their support equipment, like Panzerfaust and bazookas and whatnot that get added, or anti-tank rifles or whatever added to a standard unit. So yeah, that gets done. I know we've gone into a lot of detail on guns, so because of that, let's progress a little bit. Well, I think they would have kicked me over my, because I am still on the forum there, but I don't really engage with them on the forum. I think the Black Ice people would have kicked me, even though I don't know Django, who's a friend actually, though it hasn't been around much recently, who's joined their development team, over some of my comments and disagreements over Black Ice, except just because I'm a bit of a YouTuber here, they don't quite want to go that far with me. Now, I was requested by the Total War team to not ever play their mod again because of my complaints about their mod. They really don't want, and I haven't played their mod since just because I don't want to, but their request for me not to play their mod is no reason for me not, that would keep me from playing their mod. But they don't want me playing their mod again. They've requested that because they don't like my criticisms of their mod. Now, what does this do? Is there, okay, well, SCA. Yeah, is there a quick answer? What do these the 250s do in your mod here? Well, Panzeroo, even when it was the four main guys back in the old days, Panzeroo was still sort of the main arbiter of what got in and what didn't into the mod. And so that, you know, not so much that he was putting his foot down, but yeah, you know, he had up the ship of it. Hey, thanks for following. So, I don't know. Okay, I don't know if you know. Let's. I'm curious to find out. Okay. Mobile battalions. Okay. Mechanized. Scout car manpower mechanized. Is this just mechanized? Design similar to some level of it as. Yeah, I don't know how detailed you really want to get into. Yep, just a mech. Okay. Hello, Jing Bright. Thank you. Yeah, Why have these here? Realizing that they weren't part of mechanized forces as far as I've ever read or heard or used. They're part of this force over here, reconnaissance. The 250 was reconnaissance. The 251 was mainline. Now these were sort of infantry assigned to the reconnaissance battalion, yes. And so they had tank destroying models, mortar models, you know, carries, what, 6 guys in the back crammed in their infantry models, maybe 4 or 6 guys, I forget. Yeah, but they're more reconnaissance. That just seems silly. That seems silly to me, to have these here. I don't get that. Just because it should just go down here and this path here. Because this is these models were attached to the reconnaissance troops almost exclusively. So yeah, okay, well we're gonna skip that. Let's go and research that. Okay, secure. Okay. So now we'll be able to trade better with Sweden. Align Hungary, align Romania. January 1940. Okay, that's going to take 35 days. Okay, let's see. We want to do this in maybe the starting of March. So in about a month, we want to do this. So let's grab up that, I think, because that's going to be short term enough. And we have the ability to add another person here to our high command. Army regrouping recovery rate. Yeah, let's do Army logistics. Now, of course, Fritsch was gone by this time, if it's the same Fritsch that I know. The Bloomberg Fritsch affair, which he was kicked out of the army. Japan, excellent idea. Yes, I guess we'll do that. Line Hungary, Triple Alliance. Okay. Okay, yeah. End of February, so we sort of have an April. Okay, well, we're still cranking through all of these synthetic refineries. Good. We almost filled up all of our slots. Some places at least. So far, the World Ablaze team has taken my criticisms quite well. Not that they've agreed with me, but they've taken my criticisms quite well. And yes, I can be harsh, I guess. Yeah, we did do an airbase national focus that built some. What maybe we need to do a little bit more than air bases, and I really don't know about more air bases versus simply more fighters. Do we need the or more aircraft, not just fighters, but do we need the air bases either in coverage or size? So yeah, I think we're good for the territory that we have. You just go after fighters here because we already got some guys going after bombers. Who can we invite to faction? Romania, okay. We'll go with that. We'll take them coming on board. That'll be good. Integrate Romania. We don't. It's German right proposes econ. Building slots, Baden. Was a puppet of the German right. Yes, they're not in the same faction yet. Well, over here now. We're looking. Second Vienna Award. Why haven't we got one of the following? France does not exist. Okay. Don't know. France thingy, but okay. Yeah, I think we'll take the time to get that. Yeah, and like I said before, I'm not claiming that I'm right and you're wrong. It's just my views of the thing. And I'm sure in some details, I'm sure I know I'm wrong on something or other. And part of what we're doing, and I say we're because I mod as well, is trying to interpret reality into the game. And let's move division that way. And we're never going to get that 100% right, just as a basic statement. And so on any of these issues, it's just, is that bad? No, it's unexpected. That's part of, I'll readily admit that I wasn't expecting the idea of having this as a protectorate as opposed to just annexing. I'll admit that right up front here, but I still kind of think for most game terms, the big thing is because there was almost zero resistance movement going on. I mean, there was a teeny little bit, and yes, there was enough sort of resistance cells for, I forget their names, the two Czechs that parachuted in that assassinated Reinhard Heydrich. There was enough of that going on. There was a little bit, but it was nothing like the Dutch, the Belgians, the French. Nothing like that. Nothing to although they weren't active until sometime post D-Day landings, but there was a lot more Danish resistance. Again, they weren't like blowing anything up. They were being entirely peaceful, but they were getting British arms shipments into Denmark for when the Rising happened. There was a lot of stuff, but basically I don't quite know the negotiations between Britain and Denmark during the time period. Now, of course, realize that Denmark signs the sort of second anti-Comintern pact, and sort of kind of technically joins the war against the Soviet Union, but only against that. So, and that's sort of iffy. But so that there's a widespread network of resistance cells, but again, they're entirely inactive from a sabotage type aspect. They're just organizing until they do sort of the national uprising towards the end. But there isn't even that level of stuff going on in Czechoslovakia. It's at a very minor level, and so it's mainly the manpower or woman power or whatever is heavily used both in, we'll call it Czechoslovakia, as well as, shall we say, exported to Germany, but not as slave labor, but as paid labor. they're heavily used labor-wise in German industries, farming, all that stuff, heavily used. And I think basically just about as heavily used as Germans. So the one thing that, and this happens when German occupation comes here, you basically determine who you are. And if you can speak any German and you want to be German, you're German. So when you come in, if you want to be, and they're signing up, oh yeah, yep, Guten Morgen, Herr Official, or whatever the hell. My German is about that good. But if you come in and speak German to them and claim to be German, they'll just, oh yeah, you're one of the not Sudeten Germans, the ones that are living along the border, but you're one of the sort of leftover Germans from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Oh sure, you're German. Sign off on it. You're German. You get your German documentation, and you're treated as if you're German as much as anybody else. And if you're of the right age, you're drafted into the army. I would say for at least a city like Prague, that would be, at least just pulling it on my ass, but that would be somewhere between 5 and 10% of the population of Prague would probably have gotten German citizenship upon an invasion, and we're like, yay, we're back in power again, yay, kind of thing. And so if you have the right age, including for women, because women, not drafted into the army, but drafted into various, they could go into the army or the Air Force much more as, anti-aircraft gunners and that kind of stuff, but much more into the labor usage, whether it's farm labor or factory labor or whatever. That's going on. But so if you're the right age, or you're that, then you're basically given German status, and you have to sort of prove to the Germans that you're truly a bad person to them for them to not have the status. Meaning they're just going to trust you. I mean, it's just like, oh yeah, you're German, fine, whatever, boom, click, stamp. Here's your papers. You're German, fine. Now, if you get arrested for doing something bad, well, that's what I mean. You have to prove to them to get arrested to do that, to not be considered as German as either a Sudeten German or a German living over here. Yeah, you're just German. And yet there's about 80 to 90% in these areas population German speaking. They get German status, and so they are drafted into the army, whatnot. And yes, this is 100% integrated here. I do see that, of course. And so you get that, but the Czechs are really heavily integrated into the German economic system. And it goes very easily because, if you were born before 1918, 1919, you were born as a sort of a Austrian citizen, as in Austro-Hungarian, sort of a Austro whatever citizen, that part of the Austrian half of the empire. You were born into that. So if you were, if you're 45 in 1945, okay, so at the end of the war, if you're 45 years old at the end of the war, you would be maybe a bit young, but maybe you were drafted into, and especially if you're 46 or 47, you were a male, you were probably drafted into the Austro-Hungarian army, in Czech units, because they were somewhat segregated. But so you were part of the German element as opposed to the Hungarian or Magyar element of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. You were part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So you grew up with German speakers around you, to the point that if you wanted to take for someone of sophistication in Prague in the interwar years until just at the end of the 1930s, you spoke German. That was the elite language of Prague's elite, was German speaking. So if you went to the higher end cafes or whatever, they were speaking German to each other. The Czechs were speaking German to each other. These are people who thought of themselves as Czechs, were speaking to with each other. So German was sort of the high-level language in Czechoslovakia. It was sort of the language of the educated, if you will. And probably all people with sort of scientific engineering type degrees got them in a German-speaking school, especially if they're somewhat older. And so you spoke a lot of German. So this all really integrates really well. Where, come over to, this part of Poland, nobody speaks German. If they speak a non-Polish language, it's probably Russian, because Russia, this had been Russian Empire. Now over here, this is a different matter. But, so, yeah, that's why this is still sort of to me. Where, you're occupying into the Ukraine. Well, there are German settlements that are dotted all about that happened, I think, starting under Catherine the Great, or maybe even back to Peter the Great. I don't know. But there were definite small German settlements around the Volksdeutsch, as they become called under the Nazi regime. But most all the Ukrainians, other than these small isolated communities, and the small isolated communities, when they're talking to somebody outside of their community, they're speaking in either Russian or Ukrainian or what language it's not in German. So so basically out here, this is Germany as foreign occupation, not Germany as returning to their natural rulers, because, the big fight in 1778, I think it was, or somewhere around there. The big fight here this was Austrian controlled, and Prussia was trying to take it over. So, we're talking back in the 1770s. It's the Winter Queen, the brief time that Bohemia is briefly independent. And so it's just not, they were Czechs, but they were used to German overlordship. And let's get back to some of these bills. This is what burner accounts are for. Yeah, I have some burner accounts and things to KB. I know it won't sound as subjective, but the strongest resistance was Yugoslavia, Poland. I'm going to disagree on Poland. Until the Warsaw Uprising, yeah. The second one. Yeah. Yugoslavia, definitely. That was very, very strong resistance. Absolutely. But, if you really take in the French, the Army of the Interior uprising, you take in Greek resistance movements, you take in the Italian resistance to German occupation, you take in some of the Russian areas, that resistance versus the Germans. Poland was significant, but only really with the Warsaw Uprising, I would say. The 5 largest resistant movements were the Dutch, French, Polish, Soviet. Well, large versus just, numbers versus activity. Polish size can be comparable, particularly years. Polish home army was the largest resistant and occupy. The French resistance, I'm French, was just French being normal peeps. Actually, they were already fighting each other before the war. Yes, they were Spanish communists arriving in the country, just created more of a mess than it was already. Don't count de Gaulle's resistance. They were military and created, a state. Hello, Anis Khalid. Probably butchering that, but hello. Okay, Drunken Barbarian. Yeah, no, and and part of the reason, not all of the reason, but there are several reasons why Poland is not someplace like Yugoslavia. One, massive amounts of Poles evacuate the country, including one of their armored companies that turned their tanks over to Romania, because at that time Romania was a bit more allied with the Western Allies. And those tanks end up becoming like the Royal Tank Company or something, sort of Royal Tank bodyguards for the king. but turned their equipment over to Romania. And they all flee and form two Polish divisions, one in which is sort of trapped in this part of France at the fall of it and fights its way to Switzerland, and it gets interred for the rest of the war in Switzerland. The other one fights its way out and gets to the British. And then, of course, the other sort of, that's one. Two, Soviets come in, basically kill all the officers. They're half of the officer catch, and Germany actually turns over a bunch of officers to them. The Soviets just shoot them all, where the Germans just worked them to death. The Soviets just take them out to the Katyn forest and just shoot them all. But there are huge numbers of Poles, soldiers, as well as just the Soviets are worried about, and they're worried about it in the Baltic states. They're worried about it in Ukraine and other places, but particularly the Baltic states and Poland. They're worried about the reliability of the populace. So they massively collect up military-age males and ship them out somewhere out here to the Gulag system. So they depopulate their occupied section of Poland of a large percentage. I'm not saying a majority. I don't quite know the percentage, but a large percentage, a big percentage of the military age males. They send them there, and then most of them, not all of them, but most of them, because there are collaborationists with the Soviets. These are the communists that don't believe in the idea of a nation state of Poland. Maybe they believe in an ethnicity of Poland, but they don't believe in a state of Poland because they're communist internationalists. Some of them do join the Soviet Union, but the Poles, of course, march through Iran, march in, down here and get equipped to it's sort of a core size Polish unit. Recently found an interesting article or interesting photos and whatnot about a bunch of Polish girls, teen girls, that were part of the exodus that marched out, but they try to separate out all the families and whatnot. They get sent down to Rhodesia, and they're in a girls' school that's set up for them in Rhodesia down during the war. And there's a little controversy about forcing them to go back to Poland after the war, whether they should stay in Rhodesia. Some of the Rhodesians sort of want them to, but the Polish, whatever groups, sort of object to that because the Rhodesians, of course, want more European settlement in Rhodesia, where the Poles don't want to see that happening. Not so much the girls themselves, but just the Polish exile movement or whatever doesn't really want to see that happen. And so the Soviets depopulate military. So was that two? Those are sort of the two big reasons. Three, a little bit of it is, and I've read Hitler's Empire, which deals with Polish occupation. There's just a large acquiescence to German occupation. Some of it is because they're former German, territories. The farmers grew up thinking, at least initially thinking that, oh, okay, instead of Poles in charge, Germans in charge, I'm just the farmer. I own my farm. I just farm here. It doesn't really matter. When the Germans were in charge, things ran well. Maybe they ran as well under Poland. They might feel more nationalism. But hey, it's just there. But even if you look at this stuff, even the way they were treating just the Poles, now, the Poles were quite happy, most of them were quite happy with trying to get rid of the Jews. But so there was a fair amount of collaborationists with the Germans going on. And so it's, the home army eventually with the rising in Warsaw. But there really wasn't a lot of that largely because I would say moving the people out either by the Soviets or the Poles fleeing mostly through Romania, but lesser extent through Hungary and coming through Yugoslavia and helping them get out and around to France initially. I will disagree. Poland had a whole underground movement education. Unfortunately, it is very little known. Yeah, that very well could be the whole. Now, I'm not saying there wasn't a movement, but at least from the stuff that I've read, there's not a lot of, like you're talking, sabotage. there wasn't a lot of sabotage. And partially my evidence for that is the lack of my reading or seeing deployment of security forces to protect the trains by the Germans. If we're looking into, this area, whether, Belarus here or Ukraine, we're seeing a lot more needs to, have armored trains to fight off partisans, a lot more of, rear area security here. Maybe some areas that were former Soviet occupied, yes. But I'm mainly thinking of, central Poland, the general government, and the areas that were reintegrated directly back into the Reich. These areas, there is very little need to have significant security protecting railways. So if the Germans don't feel the need to do it, there must not be a lot of action. I just take that as sort of, my evidence. Hello, Death Corpse. How you doing? Well, Poles were very, very anti-Semitic, and there was a lot of that going on. And I've read some books about it, about the Poles. And it's the pogroms run by Polish. Yeah, there's a list of that, Drunken Barbarian. And so I don't know whether it's your education system that doesn't cover it, but there was a lot. And there's some horrific footage. Now, this isn't Poland, but I think it was in Riga, of just the locals coming out and, I don't know how much I want to get demonetized here, but just, I guess a good description would be murder party. That, they're like, beating people, women, children, just beating Jews to death, filmed by local, not by the Nazis, but by local Latvians and Estonians and Lithuanians. But I think it was Riga where the film was. My understanding, there was similar things going on in Poland too. That's my understanding. Nice little murder parties, and you see the people just running, the Jews just running. While people are beating on them and they're bleeding and they're being hacked apart. It's horrific stuff. I'm doing well. The book Einsatztruppen, which I read, spoke about the pogroms in Poland and the Baltic nations. Yeah, it was horrific. And it's about my understanding, and I'm sure it can vary, but my understanding, the Baltic states and Poland, it was all about the same. And it was horrific. It was horrific. It was, and in some ways, it horrified the Germans. Not because, and I'm not talking like the standard German at home. I'm talking about the German enforcement element, because it was so disorganized. It was just sort of murder parties going around butchering people, where the Germans wanted to do it methodically when they were ready to do it. It was sort of just that it was. I forget some of the details. I recently read Hitler's Empire, and it deals a lot with Germany and Poland. How during World War I, the Germans were actually sort of setting up a puppet state for, to be sort of an independent Poland. Well, independent might be over, but a self-governing Polish state overseen by the German Empire that they were setting up during World War I. That all goes away, of course, once Germany loses, but goes from that, switching over to the various Nazi and, post-war elements, conflicts, dealing with the stuff. And I forget, there were, in the general government area, there were two basic areas that had two, Gauleiters would be the wrong term, but had two heads of them. One of them, and I forget which one, doesn't initially go after. I mean, yes, they got to wear Stars of David and all that stuff and are segregated, but realize that the Jews in Poland are sort of the technical class. We often in the West hear and think of the Jews as sort of like the money lenders or the bankers or whatever you want to call them is that way. But in Poland, according to this book, and the book may be all wrong, but according to the book, a lot of the technical class that was like, you know, something below maybe an actual watchmaker, but more than a simple blacksmith. That sort of technical, but plumbers or other sorts of people that technically kept things running. I'm not talking bureaucrats. I'm talking sort of technical tradesmen were sort of the Poles, or not, were the Jews in Poland. And in his area, he kept those people working. And then in the other area, and I forget whether it was Hans Frank area or the other guy, and I'm lousy on the names right now. The other area, they basically get rid of those people. And I think it is sort of in the main area because of the Warsaw Ghetto area. And that part of Poland, or that part of the general government, because I'm trying to be very specific, not the Reich-occupied or Reich-annexed parts, but the general government element. That part really starts to fall apart. It just doesn't run well because you've removed the technical class that were the Jews. Where the other part continues to run fairly well until they're sort of forced to put all the Jews into camps that the SS is enforcing it. Now, the other Nazi wasn't a good Nazi. No, he wasn't a good guy. He was just a pragmatist realizing, oh, you want something done, the Jews do it. Okay, yeah, leave them there. We want the plumbers to work or the whatever to work well, the sort of technical peoples to work well. And it was very much a Jewish-based thing. And that supposedly was upsetting to the Poles generally, that sort of technical class. And it was sort of a tradesman idea in which, of course, they were keeping it within the family or within the Jewish community. So lesser educated Poles or whatever were resentful of the status of the Jews in that. But so it was sort of a practical thing. And if I'm all wrong, it's because I read the wrong books. But that's my understanding. Didn't collaborate with Germans and had forces to help. Okay. There are 5 cases on the page, and Poland was the only one that didn't collaborate with the Germans and force. Okay. The reason the Poles did not collaborate with the Germans was the Germans refused Poland collaboration. They did not. Germany, this is degrading into a lecture here. Germany wanted to erase Poland from the map. They were allowed 0 collaborationist elements. That's why they call it the general government, not the general government of Poland, just the general government. Now I'm translating that slightly into English, but it's basically general government. They did not allow it. Now, if the Germans could define you as anything else, and again, like when the Germans come into Czechoslovakia, when they come into Poland, and there is still there was at the start, at the end of World War I, even though this was part of the Russian Empire, there was a German minority living in Warsaw. I think they figure about 80% of that German minority by the time World War II starts has fled Poland. So these are people, I don't know whether they showed up 10 minutes before World War I, but they're definitely there before World War I because obviously they would not have, the Russians would not have let them in. But these were residents prior to World War I, as well as other parts of Poland that were there. But there was a German ethnic minority living in Warsaw, And so when Germany shows up there, and it's just a small fraction of what it was before, showed up anybody that spoke some German, even if it was just broken German and claimed to be German, they were categorized as Germans. And then, of course, they were liable to being drafted and anything else. So sometimes that backfired on them. But they got status of that. And this book goes into a lot of the stuff. So, but if you're any other ethnicity than Poland, so if you were sort of Ukrainian, or if you decided to categorize yourself as Lithuanian or Russian, if you categorize yourself as a Russian and joined a Russian volunteer unit, because there were Russian volunteer units in the German army, or fighting for the Germans, or whatever you want to call it, they collaborated. It was the Germans who refused to allow Poles to collaborate. It was not Poles refusing to collaborate with Germany. I'm not saying most Poles wanted to. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying it's just Germans refused it. And that was from top down from Hitler. Poland was to be erased from the map. There was going to be nothing Poland left. That was going to be gone. I'm not saying denying Polish compliant. Poland has largest numbers of justice among. Yes, and they do. And this is why most of the time I've been saying many. Underestimate the feelings of Poland to Germany. Yeah. We tried that for Urals in Tatra Mountains region, but it didn't work. Okay, don't know quite that reference. Too strong anti-German feelings, especially that the Germans starting committed mass murders on Polish people since the start of the war. It was Poland just saying, well, I'm not saying that there, and I don't think there would have been large numbers of Poles joining up with Germany, but I know it was a German policy not to recruit in any way, shape, or form Polish forces. It was just no. Okay, guys, I think. And thank you, very noisy car this time. I think we're going to have to end this here. I know we haven't gotten very far into the game. I did want to start the war off this morning, but talking too much. So I've greatly enjoyed it. I hope Lorg and Drunken Barbarian and everyone else has enjoyed the talk and hanging out. Those watching on YouTube, sorry if we didn't get more of the game done, but I hope it was interesting for you as well. I will be playing War Thunder tomorrow. If you guys want to join me, whether just to watch or play with me, we'll be doing that tomorrow. I don't know if I don't think I have any. I know I don't have anything specifically scheduled midweek, and of course we'll be back next week to continue this. So thanks, IKB, Tinnis, Lord, Drunken Barbarian, everybody. So see you guys soon.